Have you ever wondered what the best Dark Souls game is? Have you ever wondered what is the best Souls game that FromSoft has made? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be listing them all, ranking them in a tier list. So let's not waste any time and get right into the content. The first game we're going to be starting out with is the original Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1, I have a long history with. I originally played this, I believe, on the Xbox 360. I played a buddy that I believe had a I want to say PS3 at the time. And I've also played the Prepare to Die edition on the PC, which was utter gutter trash. And I played the Remastered edition on the PC, which is really, really good. I last played this game maybe 2 months ago on the PC. Amazing game, guys. Level design wise, nothing's beat it yet. It is incredible how good this game is. Boss design, incredible. There are some bullshit bosses in this game. There is some trick bosses and, like meme bosses, but most of the bosses are really, really incredible. Everybody always talks about Ornstein and Smog. Alatosis, in the DLC, amazing. There's a lot of really, really great bosses in this game, a lot of hard bosses, but overall the difficulty is a little bit less in the original Dark Souls than in some of the sequels. Definitely less than, let's say, like Elden Ring. Definitely less, from what I understand it, of Bloodborne. And I would say 100% definitely less than Sekiro. Sekiro is one of the hardest games here. So yeah, Dark Souls, really, really good game. To me, it absolutely deserves the S plus tier. I think that very few games have had the level design that this game has. I also think, surprisingly, if you're trying to get in and break into the Soulsborne genre, Dark Souls is one of the best places to start because the difficulty is a little bit less. A lot of the weapons you can get in the early game can be really, really strong. You don't have to worry about weapons too much. You can just get one or two weapons from the early game, continue to upgrade it. There is some broken stuff you can do, like with pyromancy in the game. It's just a great game. I love Dark Souls 1. It's fantastic. Now, I will say this, the Prepare to Die edition doesn't even get sold on the PC, like Steam store anymore. The Dark Souls Remaster is definitely the way to go. If you have an option, definitely play that. I think the visuals have been enhanced quite a bit, and I think the frame rate's better. Especially like in Blighttown, the frame rate is massively enhanced compared to the original release, which it was like a slideshow. And the original release did have quite a few problems, guys. So I will say this, Dark Souls, play the Remastered edition. Enjoy it. It's amazing in 2023. Fantastic gaming experience. Let's move on next to Demon's Souls. Now, I originally played this back on the PS3 when I had a PS3. Demon's Souls really has aged really badly. So we have two Demon's Souls variants. We have the new remaster on the PS5, which I played at a friend's house, but I have not played the full game. So I want to put that asterisk. But I did play the full game of the original PS3 release, which is the exact same content. It's just graphically enhanced and everything. Demon's Souls, I'm going to be putting in the meh category. They really have, at this point, they had not really figured out the Soulsborne genre. This is the game that started it all, so there's a lot to be said for that from a historical context. But honestly, if you're playing this game and you've played any of the other Dark Souls games, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to see that there's a big, big drop in quality. The healing is different, like with the actual like herbs that you get and everything. It's definitely a very, very different feeling game. The game is also a lot shorter, which I think hurts it. It definitely doesn't have the length of some of these other titles, especially not the length of like Sekiro or Elden Ring. It's Demon's Souls is probably one of the shortest games on this list. From what I've played of the remaster, and this is maybe like 10 hours at a buddy's house. Like I said, I do not own a copy of this game, but I have played it at a friend's house. I would put the new Demon's Souls as better, like one tier better. The old Demon's Souls, you can play this on the emulator now on the PC very easily, or you can get the original copy on the PS3. I think that it's just in the meh tier. So remaster definitely helped things, especially visually, but you have to understand that still, this game has aged a lot, and some of the mechanics are not going to be what you expect from the later titles. So Demon's Souls can't really be too high on the list for that reason. But that's just my opinion. Let's now go on to Dark Souls 2. Now, Dark Souls 2 is probably going to be the hottest take for me in the entire series. I'm going to put Dark Souls 2 in the S tier. I love Dark Souls 2. I think it's fantastic. It's very different from the rest of the series, but different in a very good way. I think Dark Souls 2 did a lot of changes and positive changes. I really like Dark Souls 2. I do think the invincibility frames, like if you don't understand adaptability and you don't actually understand how that affects the dodge rolling and the iframes, you may have a lot of trouble in Dark Souls 2. The bosses in Dark Souls 2 are really good. I like the length of the game, especially with the DLC. This is a very long game, which I can really respect. You have a lot of options about which areas to go to first. There's a lot of diversity. It builds on Dark Souls 1, but it doesn't copy it, which, like, that's what I'm going to be talking about Dark Souls 3. I feel like Dark Souls 3 just copies Dark Souls 1, but Dark Souls 2 actually tries to innovate. It tries to step outside the box. A lot of people didn't like that, but I'm a huge fan of Dark Souls 2. Also, something really unique with Dark Souls 2 is because of the dual wielding and kind of how you can basically like have two-handed weapon attacks. Honestly, guys, some of the stuff that you can do in Dark Souls 2 and the PvP in Dark Souls 2 is incredible. I wish more people would come to this community. I played Dark Souls 2 for a lot of hours. I really, really enjoy the game. I think it's a fantastic game. Some of the bosses are reskins of each other. There's no question about that. But honestly, Dark Souls 2 has a really, really good starting area too. Like Majula, I think is absolutely incredible as a starting area. And it has some of the best music in the whole series. I love Majula's theme. I really, really like the leveling up area. I like how we're looking out on the ocean. It's really peaceful, which Dark Souls 3 has like a really, really somber, end of the world. You're down in this like dungeon when you're leveling up. Majula is perfect. Yeah, Dark Souls 2 lived up to the hype of Dark Souls 1, in my opinion. Now, I will say there's several different variants of Dark Souls 2. There's the original variant and basically Scholar of the First Sin. I'm putting Scholar of the First Sin up in S plus tier. The original variant I'm going to put for A for amazing. I did originally play the original variant, and then I got Scholar of the First Sin on the console, and then later I rebought Scholar of the First Sin on the PC. So I've had a lot of experience with Dark Souls 2. The original version of Dark Souls 2, in my opinion, is inferior. I do think Scholar of the First Sin added a lot of content, and it was better, in my opinion, pretty much in every way. So yeah, I really like Dark Souls 2. Love Scholar of the First Sin. S plus tier, really amazing game. Now we're going to be talking about Dark Souls 3. Not a hot take, guys. Not a hot take. Dark Souls 3, people are going to hate me for this. Meh, guys, meh. Dark Souls 3 was the biggest copy pasta of the series. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the bosses in Dark Souls 3 are incredible. But here's some of the issues I have with Dark Souls 3. Not enough invention. I think it definitely basically copied Dark Souls 1. I also didn't like the increase in speed, but also how the bosses worked in Dark Souls 3. I really didn't like a lot of the areas. Like the Poison Swamp area, just the way you progress in Dark Souls 3, it felt much less epic than in Dark Souls 1 and 2. That it felt like much less of an adventure, and it felt a little bit more on rails. It felt definitely more like pushed into a certain path. There was a lot more bullshittery and a lot more like kind of crazy enemies. Now I will say that some people complain about like the level rush, like to get to bosses in Dark Souls 2, and that's definitely the case. Dark Souls 3 had amazing PvP. I think PvP wise, it was one of the best of the series, but you didn't have as much weapon customization as in Dark Souls 2. So because of that, really story wise, here's the thing. Dark Souls 3, when people talk about the really amazing parts, they normally talk about like the Ring City and some of the DLC, which is really good. The Dark Souls 3 DLC is really, really nice. But base game, it's also much shorter. Yeah, I didn't, Dark Souls 3 never meshed with me. It never hit me personally. So I'm going to be putting in the mad tier. That is very controversial because I know a lot of people are going to say, how could I put Dark Souls 2 above Dark Souls 3? And the simple answer is to it, I like Dark Souls 2 a lot more than Dark Souls 3. And I like Dark Souls 1 a lot more than Dark Souls 3. So that's basically the simple answer to that. Next, we're going to be getting on to Bloodborne. Now, Bloodborne is another title because I do not own a PS4 or PS5. I have played, but I played at a friend's house. So I have not played through the entire game, but I probably played maybe 20 hours over a a variety of play sessions and several different times over the course of the years. I still want to play the full game. I still want to play the DLC. The atmosphere of Bloodborne is extremely good. The atmosphere of Bloodborne is extremely good. The difficulty is really, really good. And it feels the most different. Sekiro and Bloodborne definitely feel the most different. Um, Difficulty-wise, I would put it somewhere between like Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Sekiro. Sekiro, in my opinion, is the hardest game on this list. Bloodborne is harder than Dark Souls 1, that's for sure. Probably harder than Dark Souls 3, somewhere in that realm of like Dark Souls 2. But I don't think it's as hard as Elden Ring, and I don't think it's as hard as Sekiro from what I played. I've talked to numerous friends that basically agree with this. Some of them say, hey, it's one of the harder games in the series. Some of them say, nah, it's not that hard. It just depends on if you're a very defensive player. If you are, you're probably going to find Bloodborne to be very difficult. If you're a very aggressive player, then Bloodborne is probably going to be significantly easier for you because it does reward aggression quite a bit. But I do love Bloodborne. The kind of Cthulhu horror-esque element is either going to appeal to you or don't appeal to you. I personally like the samurai aesthetic of Sekiro the best. I also really love the fantasy aspect of, like, let's say, Elden Ring. So Bloodborne's aesthetic doesn't hit me quite as hard, but it is a fantastic game. I think I have to put it A for amazing. If I played it, the full game, maybe I would put it in the S tier, but I really don't think just because of the themes, the art design, for me, it's a little bit under the best of the best. So now we're going to be talking about, I don't even know why Dark Souls is still here. I'm assuming that was just, yeah, that's another copy. I believe this is the original copy of Dark Souls. So we're just going to put that back in the S plus tier. Again, like I said, Dark Souls play Remastered. Pretty simple. Next, we're going to be talking about Elden Ring. Elden Ring is an absolutely fantastic game, and Elden Ring does deserve to be up here, probably either number 1 or number 2 with the game that we're going to be talking about next. The thing about Elden Ring is just value for money. It's the best option on this list. It's incredible how much content you get in Elden Ring. It's incredible how much of that content is original content. And the open world design helps the game so much because you feel so much freedom. There's so much build choices you can have. Soon we're going to be having an expansion, Shadow of the Erdtree. There's so much good to say about Elden Ring. I can't say almost anything negative about it. I think it's a fantastic game, a 10 out of 10 game. The art is amazing. The backgrounds are amazing. The combat is amazing. Honestly, Elden Ring is still my most enjoyed game out of all these games. That may not be the game that I think is the best, and we're going to be talking about that soon, but I think Elden Ring is probably my favorite game to go back and replay and has the most replayability. I think some of the boss designs and just the progression of you from basically like a lowly tarnished all the way to Elden Lord is so amazing in this game. Like, there's so much of a sense of progression in Elden Ring. And so for me, Elden Ring is definitely an S plus tier game. It's absolutely incredible. And I can't wait for the expansion to come out to sink even more eyes into this game. Because in my opinion, I love it just so, so, so very much. What about Sekiro? Sekiro, guys, if there's a actual Souls-like game that is a true skill game, it's Sekiro. If you want the hardest game in the Souls-like series, it's Sekiro. If you want to see the true masterpiece of FromSoft, it's Sekiro. Sekiro is the best game on this list. It's not my favorite game, and that's something very important to note. I like Elden Ring better. I like Dark Souls 1 better. But objectively, Sekiro is the best game because Sekiro is a game about pure skill. It's a game about overcoming yourself and really becoming a better person. When you beat Our Father and you actually beat some of the hardest bosses in this game, you feel like a literal god on earth. Like, it is so divine how the boss fights are in this game. The parrying and counter mechanics are so perfectly designed. Sekiro is merciless. It takes so many hours, maybe 20, 30 hours, to even figure out how to play the game and what you should be doing. And I rage quit this game so many times, came back, eventually beat it. Sekiro is an amazing game, guys. It's really the game on this list that I think is just on another level, truly on another level. If you created a separate tier, probably Sekiro deserves the highest spot. Now, like I said, for replay value, I really think Elden Ring is much, much better. I think Elden Ring has the best replay value. and is the best overall package. For level design and actually like story immersion, I think the original Dark Souls 1, specifically the Remastered edition, is the best. But in terms of combat, in terms of boss fights, in terms of the epicness and these set piece designs, Sekiro is by far the best. I also really like the verticality on Sekiro. I think that really enhances the game. And yeah, Sekiro, I really hope we get another game like Sekiro in my lifetime, because Sekiro is one of those games that you may not get for another 20 to 30 years. I mean, it's that rare, guys. It's really a gem. It's a true triumph. Sekiro is absolutely incredible. So I hope you like my tier list, guys. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. I also plan to do one with all the Soulsborne, Souls-like games. So that would be things like Lies of P that just came out, Phemersa. We have like Steel Rising, those type of games. The truth is, guys, a lot of those games aren't as good. So I wanted to focus mainly on the first main Souls games from FromSoft. And then I'm also going to be covering a lot of the Souls-like genre. So really hope you like this. Crush that like button. Hit that subscribe. Less than 1% of my viewers are subscribed. Please be my hero. Hit the subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.